Good evening. This week we'll be reading two Parshiot, Vayakel and Pekudei, as well as the special Mafta reading of Parshat Chodesh. In 1919, in Tokyo, Japan, work began on the Imperial Hotel. The Imperial Hotel was designed by the great American architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and this hotel had a number of innovative features to be able to withstand an earthquake, which is a common feature of life in Japan. One of the things that Frank Lloyd Wright did was make that the foundation had the ability, certain pieces could move independently of each other a little bit. This proved to be quite helpful when April 26, 1922, the largest earthquake in decades hit Tokyo, flattening a large part of the city, and the Imperial Hotel withstood this great earthquake. We read in the first of our two Parshiot this week about the building of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, the walls were made of shittim wood, of these planks, and each plank was held together with bars that kept them locked together. And at the bottom of the planks, the bottom of these krashim, were these little smaller pieces, two for each plank, that fit into adanim, that fit into these sockets that were the base of the planks and held up the walls of the Mishkan. What I think is significant is if you think about the Mishkan, it's a very rigid structure, and yet the foundation has the ability to move a little bit. That if the sands of the desert shift, one of these adanim, one of these sockets, can shift a little bit with it, and the structure would not need to topple. And I think there's something very similar to Frank Lloyd Wright's design for the Imperial Hotel. So what's the symbolic meaning of having a foundation that can shift a little bit while the Mishkan, while the walls itself remain firm? And I think it's the following. Our goal is to build physically and metaphorically a Mishkan for Hashem, a sanctuary to bring the divine presence into this world. And there are certain ways we go about building this Mishkan. However, we recognize that sometimes there's earthquakes. Sometimes things don't go in the way that you expect them to go. Sometimes the sands of the desert shift, and you don't want your entire Mishkan to collapse. The adanim, the sockets, two for each plank, they can move a little bit. If the ground shifts, the socket can shift, leaving the wall intact, leaving the structure intact. And I think when we think about what might this mean, when we think about the role of halakha, the role of laws based in tradition, but also based in principles and based on an end goal of building a Mishkan Hashem, that I think we've seen in this past year what happens when the world gets turned upside down. The poskim look at the situation and they come to, I think, very oftentimes very creative solutions for how we can maintain the Mishkan, how we can maintain the structure, how we can continue with the very same avodas Hashem, but we can have the socket shift a little bit in order to adjust to our new reality. And I think this is an incredible strength of the halachic system, to have the ability, when things change, when things are different, for poskim to recognize, to look at the centuries upon centuries of different halachic opinions and find options that were not on the table under normal circumstances, and ways in which we can continue to serve Hashem with our Mishkan that we build with our Jewish lives. And yet, even though things may change a little bit, the overall picture, the overall goal, what we're creating, remains intact, and we continue on with what we have done in the past. But just our sockets shift a little bit with the moving sands, and we're able to continue our tradition and yet have the flexibility as needed, as directed by a great poskim, to change. Shabbat Shalom.